inside the community, did you know anyone inside the natural birth community before you got involved and ended up planning your home birth, your birth center birth, all that, like picking out a midwife? Did you know anybody beforehand, or did you end up in the community in a different way?
So we have a pretty big natural birth community in the Buffalo area. We have a lot of pockets of the community that are like super, super focused on like crunchiness and stuff like that. But we also have a lot of minorities who take what happens in hospitals and the stories that you hear in hospitals seriously when it comes to childbirth and minorities in the US. So most people around here know at least maybe one or two people who are part of like the natural birth community. So I did know people. I didn't really know anybody intimately or anything like that. But during my pregnancy and when I was finding my way through care with my midwife, more and more people that I knew were like, oh, I actually worked with them before. So it was like people I knew that I wasn't aware and stuff. But we also, in Buffalo, we have the mother from Birthed in Betrayal. And so as much as people in Buffalo are talking about the home birth community, there are stories out there that are telling people what's happening. And I know that what happened with me, because I had heard about Morgan's son's death while I was pregnant. And I had heard about a death that happened with my midwife while I was pregnant. But something that people don't know until you're on our side of things is that it's kind of twofold of an issue, where the things that cause our babies to die in home birth are so brutal and so broken from the standard of care, so terrible that it's unbelievable. If you don't have a dead baby and you haven't seen the atrocities that are happening to babies in home birth, you can't believe that what you're reading is true. And that's what happened with me, is that I was reading Morgan's story and I'm like, there's no way. There's no way. There's absolutely no way. There's no way that there's medical providers trained like this. There's no way that there's people who go into the profession of delivering babies. There's no way. None of this can be true. And then I brought questions to my midwives, who then made it about victim blaming and gaslighting. And it's about, well, we told them about the complications, but they didn't want to go to the hospital and we can't make them. But then on the other side of it, you don't realize that they tell you about the complications without telling you what they are in any kind of detail, and without relaying to you the severity of the consequences that you are willingly taking on if you make the choices. So I knew people. I knew there were good and bad sides to it. But I also, again, I was working with medically trained, state licensed people. And New York State has some strict laws about midwives and who can be called a midwife in New York State. And I really had been encouraged through the community to believe this only happens to parents who are stubbornly clinging to natural birth. This only happens to parents who are so high risk, they should have known not to try an out-of-hospital birth. It was never perfectly healthy babies and perfectly healthy birthing parents are suffering terrible consequences because of what's happening. So I knew, but it was literally, they treat their patients, I'll call them patients because I guess when you're claiming to be a medical professional, you call your people patients, but they treat their clients, the people they take money from, they treat them like horses that are spooked. And they just throw a blanket over your head and guide you through the scary parts and tell you everything is going to be fine. But it's not.
See, and for me, kind of off of that, like my goal was to go through it and I wanted to do everything natural. If something was wrong, then I was fine. I was fine with an epidural. I didn't want a C-section, but I was open to it. But I wanted to start with everything basic. And I'm like, I went into this, which I feel kind of like how Christina says, like I'm embarrassed. I am. I feel like I shouldn't, I feel stupid. Like I should have just gone to the hospital. I shouldn't have done this. My baby would be alive. And that's what everyone thinks. That's how I like, you feel that way and it's hard. So I like went into it in that way. Like I wanted to fully be natural. Like I didn't even I was completely fine without having the gestational diabetes test, which actually is illegal in the state of Maryland. And my midwife was completely fine with it. Because I was brainwashed to think, well, it's my body and my body's supposed to do this. So I should be fine. Like I should be able to, my body should make everything it needs and do everything it does and birth a baby and be fine. And, you look at this old school of life and you're like, well, they did it for all these years. And it's like, yeah, but they also all lost all these babies and we're all shown the good stuff and not the bad. And that's what really, I think, happened to me. I saw all the good stuff. And like how Madison said, it's like, oh, that'll never happen to me. Like you hear of bad stuff happening, like someone's passing in a car, like a car accident. You're like, that won't happen to me. But then it does happen to you. And you're like, okay, maybe this is real. So I feel really stupid still. I'm still really new. But I still feel like embarrassed because I was excited to prove everyone wrong. Because everyone's like, you can't have a home birth. You can't do this. This is stupid. Like all these things. And now it's like they were all right. So I have to really like learn how to accept that pride and, not, and just be humble in what I chose. And I thought I was doing the best that I could at that time.
Oh God, I was so immersed in the natural birth community, you guys. I was sucked in and gung-ho into the cult like nobody's business, man. I was a La Leche league leader. All of my friends had many home births with my midwife. So many of them, multiple home births with her. She was the midwife in our area that did out of hospital births at home. Now there was another midwife who actually worked with her too, that had a birth center, but we never heard of any catastrophes. And none of my friends had any catastrophes at all. They all had successful multiple home births. And I was a student with her and had many home births with her. Hindsight now as a NICU nurse, how many situations were luck? Because I go to deliveries at my work. I think back to some of the home birth experiences where we had 4+ meconium. We had a VBAC mom and she was in her second stage forever. And I'm like, oh my God, she just could have ruptured. Like, I think about that now, but none of it I was the one that was her bad luck. And as far as if she told people after, I don't know. I know that when I was interviewing her, my husband and I had asked her, this was before I was her student, when I was just her client. We asked, have you ever had any bad outcomes? And she talked about one, but it wasn't, that baby died in a hospital. It was a transfer for GBS sepsis. And unfortunately, I don't know the whole story. Like, did she test negative or did she not test? And the baby got septic and didn't make it in time to the hospital. I don't know all the details. So I know that she'd lost one, but the gaslighting and the pushing everything under the side, or like Madison said, putting the blanket over the eyes of the horse. Like she blamed it on other things other than the fact that this is risky care, right? I know now, very risky care, right? Not having a gestational diabetes screen, not good.
So ironically enough, I recently, probably like 4 or 5 months, no, actually, God, it's like a year ago now. I found out that GBS is what my midwife tells her clients and employees who ask about my son's death. She tells them that I denied testing for GBS, which I didn't. I absolutely did it. I wanted the medical midwife. Anything she wanted me to do, I was like, yes, let's do it. I tested negative for GBS, and my son died in utero. Like, he never even passed through the vaginal canal. And I just think when we bring up the lies and the games and the complication bingo that they play with us, it doesn't matter what state they're in, what their credentials are, any of it. All of these midwives are playing the same games with everybody's lives. And like you saying the GBS thing, I'm like, I didn't even have it. I tested negative for it in the hospital. I didn't even have it. And that's the gaslighting. If she can say it's GBS, she can say it was my fault, despite me being a VBAC mom who pushed for 12 hours with meconium.
Right. No accountability, no responsibility, because there's, yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that I don't want to speak for my midwife, but the things I've heard, you know, since I've started speaking out, and I have a lot of eyes and ears out there that give things to me, and, you know, I'm sure she blames me or the whole gaslighting. Well, she had informed consent. She knew the risks, you know, and puts the blame on the mother. And it takes a long, long time. And some of us get there sooner than others. Danielle was awesome in that sense. I used to tell her, I'm like, I can't do it yet. I'm just not ready. I'm just the guilt and the shame, because I was so sucked into the cult of midwifery and mothers